I discovered that 1% of the speakers on our Speaker Bureau roster were bringing in 80% of the bookings and over 50% of the revenue. And so I went and looked at why and what was it about these individuals, and that's how the formula came about.
Welcome to Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Future Fuzz, the digital marketing podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Maria Franzoni, with over 23 years of experience as an international speaker bureau owner and agent. She has worked with some of the world's top celebrated names in live speaking and helped shape the careers of countless experts and thought leaders. She uses her industry knowledge to help speakers to succeed. And today we'll be diving into her new book, The Bookability Formula. I've got my copy here, which is all about what the 1% of most book speakers do and what you can do too. Ciao, Maria. Thank you very much for joining the show.
Going to Italian. Ciao, Justin.
Well, you are half Italian, aren't you?
I am. It's the lower half, but let's not go into that.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Absolutely delighted to have you on the show. Let's dive into the main focus of your book. And the key is the fact that it's the formula. So you are a lover of maths, which you confess to in your writing. And you've put together a formula. And I'm just going to speak through it now and would love to hear about what each part means and really what the book is all about. So the formula is B equals R plus K plus M plus E, close brackets, V, and that's divided by E. So where did you come up with this idea and what does each part of the formula mean?
That must be awful to listen to for somebody, especially if they don't like algebra. That must be like taking them back to school days and feeling horrific. It came from, I was reading a book by Richard Koch, he wrote the 80-20 principle. And what I didn't think about the 80-20 principle, and many of us probably don't, is that we know that 20% of actions will give you 80% of outcomes. But he said you can actually keep applying it so that then 4% of actions will give you 64% of outcomes and 1% of actions will give you 51% of outcomes. I know that please don't write in and say, yes, Maria, it's 0.8. I've rounded it up to 1 to make it easy. Anyway, I thought, does this apply to speakers? And I was thinking there'll be, 20% of the speakers will deliver 80% of the bookings or the business. What shocked me, which nobody was shocked now because you've just mentioned the 1%, right? I discovered that 1% of the speakers on our Speaker Bureau roster were bringing in 80% of the bookings and over 50% of the revenue. And so I went and looked at why and what was it about these individuals, and that's how the formula came about. Did you want me to take you through what the elements mean?
Yeah, I'm absolutely fascinated. Well, I've already read part of the book already, so I know a bit about the formula. But I'm assuming that the B stands for bookability, so that's simple, right? Bookability equals.
Yeah, bookability.
Then, let's.
Yeah, so the speaker.
Yeah, let's dive into the first one. The first one is R.
So these most book speakers means that they were relevant to a paying market. So their topic's relevant. They're solving a relevant problem, and it's a pressing problem now that they're solving.
And relevant to a paying market, how many speakers are going out there and not getting paid? Have you got any stats on that?
No, do you know, there's very few stats about speakers and speaking. The only stats you can get really are about business meetings and events or professional meetings and events. Those stats exist. But it's so hard because there's so many different types of speaking events, if you think about it. There are those that are unpaid because people will speak in order to sell their products or to promote their products and their business. The business that I was in is that of professional meetings and events, where speakers are paid to share their expertise, to move an audience in some way, often business messaging, sometimes government clients and large organizations. But that was the business I was in, as opposed to the selling from stage business and personal development business.
Right. Okay, but then there are definitely speakers out there that are relevant and they do get paid a good amount for the speaking slots that they do then.
It's a big market. If you think about the business meetings and events market itself, that's around $1.6 trillion, which is bigger than the GDP of Australia. And a good percentage of that goes to the speakers.
Wow, I had no idea it was that big.
I know, most people don't. I can give you, if you would like to share in your notes, I can give you the sources of any quotes of any data that I share so that people who are geeks like me who love numbers can go and really fill their boots.
Love it. I do love a stat. I wouldn't say I love numbers, but I do love a stat and a fact. So yeah, definitely bring it on. Let's move on to K. So what's K about?
So K is known for one thing and by the right people. So if you think about the most well-known people in the world, the most well-known brands in the world, they're known for one thing. Think about Simon Sinek. You immediately think of Start With Why. If you think of
Right.
Brené Brown, you'll think of vulnerability and shame. If you think of someone like a brand, if you think of Nike, you'll think of innovation. Do you know what I mean? You're known for one thing. And one of the mistakes a lot of speakers make is that they try to be generalists, and you really need to be a specialist in one thing, but also known by the right people. Because the majority of the speakers that were in the 1%, you probably haven't heard of, Justin. They're not the famous names. They're not the big celebrities. They're the speakers that actually, made themselves bookable by following the Bookability Formula, which they didn't have because I hadn't given it to them. But we analysed
Right.
it, and it came down to, they ticked all those boxes.
How niche do some of those speakers go down to then?
Well,
Have you got an example of someone who, was not had, sorry to interrupt, have that knowledge and really deep into and known in one area?
Yeah, I mean, we've had speakers on, you may not think it's niche, but speakers on blockchain, for example, or speakers on ethics in particular areas, really narrow. Sometimes it's niche in terms of the type of audience that they would speak to. So as long as there is a paying market that's big enough, that niching actually makes you stand out.
Amazing stuff. I'm just trying to think of if there would be any very quirky events where there's one person who comes back to speak again and again and again. Every year there's an event. Are there some examples of that?
There are speakers that come back again and again when the audience is changing, which happens with some audiences, especially if you've got like leadership academies where they progress into next levels. Speakers who speak for schools often go back year after year or term after term because the audience is changing. But there are speakers who will have lots of content, so they are brought back again and again, and that's fantastic. If you can build on that content. So yes, it does happen.
Brilliant stuff. Let's move on to the next one, which is M, which is the one that I'm most keen to talk about the most. So first of all, what does the M stand for?
It doesn't stand for Maria, sadly, because I'm not in the bookability form. No, it stands for memorable, and that's memorable to the bookers, the people who are booking you, but also the fact that your speech is memorable to the audience, so they'll talk about it and apply it.
I'm going to read out some of the memorable action points because I really like this page number 91. First of all, be yourself. Everyone has something memorable about them. Lean into your natural strengths, I should say, and quirks rather than trying to imitate others. And then master storytelling. This is the bit that I want to do on a personal level. Great stories make messages stick. Develop your storytelling skills so you can take your people on an emotional and intelligent journey, not just deliver facts. You've got loads more here to dive into as well. Are there any that are your favorites, or are there any that you really try and push across to speakers who want to get booked?
I think that the first one is the first one for a reason, about that there's something immemorable about all of us. And the thing is, we're not always aware of what it is. Hopefully it's something positive rather than something negative that makes us memorable. But there's a lovely quote also in the book, and you probably got it in the beginning of the chapter, that I love. And I'm trying to remember the person who said it now, but it was, it's about Batman. I don't know if you've got it to hand. It's one of my favourite quotes. We're probably going to have to go rifling through the book now and find it, aren't we? So fill in the gaps.
Yeah, here we go. Always be yourself. Unless you can be Batman, then always be Batman. And that's Kevin Brown.
I love that. Apart from the fact I'm a huge Batman fan. Yeah, always be yourself. And I think one of the mistakes that speakers make is they'll look at somebody who they really, truly admire. It's the same with thought leaders, and you might admire someone and you'll try to be like them and emulate them and lose a little bit of yourself. And here's a test for you, Justin. if on your website, if you could take your name out of your website or out of your LinkedIn profile, and that text could then be anybody else who also talks about what you talk about or has similar expertise, then you aren't there. You're not present enough.
That is a really good tip. So you do need to add a little bit of your spice and quirkiness into, well, of course, into you. Don't hide it, basically, right? It is what it says. Be yourself.
Yes, please. Show up as well, right, as yourself. Don't hide yourself. I mean, hide some of the bad stuff, squabbling with your siblings and things like that, or, being bossy with your husband. That you don't need to bring to the forefront. But, yeah.
Future Fuzz is sponsored by SalesSource, B2B pipeline management and sales growth for your business.
Love it. A bit of a side random question then. You've worked with a lot of speakers. What's the balance between people who are really super uber extrovert and introvert? Because it's always associated that speaking and getting up on stage is a very extrovert thing to do.
I haven't analysed the numbers and I don't have the stats, but I know so many speakers, some of the best speakers who are actually real introverts and don't want to be surrounded by anybody while they're getting into sort of like into the space of being able to go and speak, and then find it very hard afterwards to network and are depleted. They give their all on stage. So whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you can still be an amazing speaker. The hard part is the offstage part for most introverts, and especially if there's a lot of networking or VIP dinners as added on the day before, or a breakfast or whatever the morning, and they want you to socialize. Introverts struggle with that because it saps the energy. And I speak from experience because I'm an introvert, and if I go to an event and I'm speaking, I have to be very careful how much I socialize, because otherwise I'm done. I just have to go and hide under the duvet.
I can imagine. Yeah. If I can share, I did a webinar yesterday. It's the first time I've ever done a webinar, and it's very one way. I love doing podcasts because it's very interactional. You get to connect, you get to learn, you get to talk. It's two way. Did the webinar for the first time, and I've been in webinars before. I've sat through many and enjoyed them, but it was so strange doing it and no one was feeding back. There was no one talking. There was no one really in the room. I was just talking into a camera, and I have to say I found that incredibly draining.
It's really hard.
I had to take some time out. Yeah, and I can imagine if you're an introverted person, you want to recharge on your own, and someone throws you into a networking event after you've just done a talk for about an hour. That must be indeed pretty draining.
It is draining. With the webinar, here's a trick for you, which I found works very well. Interact with yourself. I ask myself a question and say, I know, this is the question I would ask if I were you. And, I just talk to myself. It's just, I'd make it fun.
That's a great tip. Yeah. I was trying to, there was my old lecturer gave me a tip. It was like, imagine that the audience is naked when you're talking.
Yeah, that
because
put
it brings
me
a
off.
smile to your face, right?
No,
that put you off.
It put
made
me right
smile.
Off. Yeah, no, put me right off. That would be like, oh no.
Bit of an old school one, but it always made me laugh. Lovely. And then the storytelling part. So mastering storytelling sounds like it's so easy to do, but I reckon that is an art and a skill, and very few people can do it.
And do you know what? The best storytellers are the best speakers. If you think about some of the best speeches you may have seen and some of the best TED Talks, one of my favourite TED Talks is Sir Ken Robinson, when he's speaking about creativity. He's telling little stories.
I think that's the main one,
it's gotta
isn't
be.
it? Ken Robinson. It's the best TED Talk of all time. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's another one which is wonderful, which breaks all the rules if you think about speaking, because the speaker's sitting down and the speaker's using cards, and everybody's going to say to you, you mustn't do that. And this speaker will keep you spellbound. Sadly, she passed away recently. And that's Dame Stephanie Shirley. And the stories are amazing. And another wonderful storyteller, of course, is Sir Ranulph Fiennes, who's one of the funniest storytellers and self-deprecating. So I've just dropped 3 names there. Watch the videos. They're wonderful. All 3 of those amazing storytellers, masterclasses.
Ranulph Fiennes. I'm gonna definitely keep an eye out for that one. Do you think that storytelling can be taught?
Yes, absolutely. We tell stories all the time. We're always telling stories when we're repeating what happened today to our husband, when we're talking to other people and updating them on what's going on in the family. We're always telling stories. So we actually are innate storytellers, but when it comes to doing it on stage, you need to be a bit more structured and cut out any of the irrelevant information, because we don't want waffle stories. Stories need to be shortened to the point, as opposed to giving details that aren't relevant. So yes, we can absolutely learn.
I mean, if you can learn to be a stand-up comic, I guess you can learn to be a storyteller. Because some people fall into being a stand-up comic and then they kind of learn the trade as they go along, don't they? Someone says, oh, you're funny. And then they get up on stage for the first time and they absolutely bomb. But they get addicted to being on stage, so then they learn how to be a comic.
You know what? It's
much the same thing, isn't it?
Such a good example, saying stand-up comic, because I think some of the best storytellers are comedians, because they're observing. And they're often reporting on what we have seen, and they connect with us because they're saying out loud what we're probably thinking a lot of the time. They're excellent storytellers. So go and watch comedy shows. There's your homework. What great homework is that? That's fantastic, right?
Yeah, that's great homework. Can't be better. Bill Bailey is one of the best storytellers, if you ask me, as a stand-up comic.
It's fabulous.
Here we go. Love a bit of Bill. Bill, if you're listening, send me a signed copy of something, would you? Okay, we've done memorable, and then on to E.
Easy. This is one that I think most people take for granted and they think they're good at, and they're not. So the E is about being easy to find, easy to work with, and easy to listen to. But part of being easy to work with, of course, is being easy to book. So the easy to find one, just to give you some examples as to why people take it for granted, they think they're easy to find. If I go onto LinkedIn, is your name the same on LinkedIn as it is on your website, as it is on your other social media? And sometimes it's not. Sometimes people will have doctor in their name. Sometimes they'll have their middle name, initials. Sometimes they'll be, if they're, if they've got a longer name, if they're Edward, sometimes they're Edward, and other times they're Ed, and sometimes they're Bear. It's like, you've got to be consistent. That when I said Bear, he doesn't do this. Everybody knows Bear Grylls is Bear Grylls, right? He's Bear Grylls everywhere.
Yeah. You could also maybe make your name a bit longer so it's more memorable and easy to find too, right?
Well, yes, potentially, because if you've got, if your name is John Smith, there's probably quite a few of those. So you might need to do something with John Smith.
Some people have that unfortunate position, yeah. And what else about easy to book?
So easy to book, you want to make it a frictionless process for a booker. You want the information that they need in order to decide whether they want to book you available on your website, on your LinkedIn. How do we get in contact? How do we have a talk? How do you work? Explain the process and the procedure. Have a journey, and be responsive. So one of the things that used to drive me insane when I had my speaker bureau is that if I needed a speaker that perhaps wasn't on my roster, but I found them on Google, and I thought, right, this person will be perfect, and I found their website, and then all I had was a form. I didn't have a direct email address. I didn't have a phone number. And when you're trying to book a speaker, you need to know, are they a good fit? Are they available? How much do they cost? And you need to know right now. You can't wait for a web form. And, I'd want to pick up the phone and speak to them. I know in this day and age, young folk don't do phone calls, but they do WhatsApp messages and texts, a lot of these bookers now. So it's just that being accessible.
I think that's really fascinating. So, because if you're working in the event space, they all seem from the outside, not all of them, but they're very well planned out. They know a year in advance when the event's going to happen. But I can imagine that it's really like a momentum building up very, very quickly until the doors open for the event. And there must be a mad scramble for certain things like equipment and catering and staff. And then, of course, speakers as well. So did you find yourself literally a couple of days before an event trying to book people in?
Yeah, I often had last minute inquiries. And often it was because either somebody had dropped out so they went to a bureau, the client would go to a bureau for help because they would be panicked, or somebody had dropped the ball somewhere. And it does happen. There's so many moving parts. Or a slot becomes available because, one of the team internal speakers was going to speak and they can't do it. There's a lot of, I used to call them last minute merchants, but there's a lot of that, yes. It happens a lot.
But it must make the job fun or chaotic or not.
Well, yeah, you have to think on your feet, that's for sure.
I think one thing about being discoverable that may be in your book or may not be is a really good practice place for people in the world of speaking and to become noticed is to do a podcast.
Absolutely. That's in the known section. Absolutely. Podcasting for sure. Really good way to do it.
Known. Okay, that's back to K. Brilliant. Love it. Okay. And then to finalize that part of the formula, what does the V stand for? Algebra wasn't my thing.
Yeah. So what we've done is we've taken those 4 elements we've just talked about and I put them in brackets, and these are multipliable by V. V is value. That's the value you bring to that audience and that client. So that's the return on investment, or as one of my favorite speakers says, Jamil Qureshi, he says return on time. Because of course that's everybody's time in that conference, in that event, listening to you speaking and being away from their day to day. So value is really important.
Love it. Wonderful. And then this is divided by a smaller E.
Yes. And that E needs to say small, Justin, but you need some of it. And that E is...
Is that the ego by any chance?
Ego. That's most people's favourite section. They want to read the bad behaviour stories.
Oh, please, give us one now. Give us a bad behaviour story.
Okay, well, I'll give you one that's not in the book. I'm not going to name names. I haven't named names in the book apart from I've named one, you'll notice when you get to that chapter. So here's what happened with a speaker at one of my events. So this person was pretty well known, and so the ego was getting there. And he was speaking after dinner. So we know it's a he, we've narrowed it down. He was speaking after dinner and he arrived, and as he arrived, he sat at the table. He didn't attend the dinner. He sat at the table, rushed in and downed a few glasses of wine. Red wine was one of his thing. When he got to speak, he took his glass of red wine to the podium, which already is a no-no, right? Ready to speak. And then suddenly realised he didn't actually know where he was and who he was speaking to. In other words, what was the event? So he turned round to look at the back, the slide that was behind him, to see where he was speaking so that he could then reference it, and proceeded to deliver the same speech he had delivered at another event. That's ego.
Wow.
That's an unhappy customer, and that's giving the customer a refund. And never
the
booking that
customer
individual
got a
again.
refund?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they just delivered a rehashed speech.
A rehashed speech.
While holding a glass of wine.
Would have got away with it had there not been somebody in the audience who had already heard that speech at the other event, but would have probably got away with it otherwise.
Oh, wow. That is a brilliant story. That is massive ego and that is bad behaviour. Yeah. So, okay, right. It's a shame you can't name names, but I'm just trying to imagine.
I'll tell you after.
No, it's fine. I like the thrill of the thought. Like, who could that possibly have been? But we'll keep it off the record because we don't want to get sued on the show, do we? It's been wonderful, Maria. I've been so happy to have you on the show. I actually reached out to you on LinkedIn to get you on, so I'm really glad that we've made it happen. People can find your book, The Bookability Formula, on Amazon, I'm assuming, and anywhere else?
Yeah, Amazon, or you can come to my website, mariafranzoni.me, if you would like a signed copy.
Brilliant. And it's a really good read. It's a quick read, and it gives you some really good pieces of advice. And I'm even tempted to build my own speaker website and get discovered. There's some absolutely golden nuggets here. Maria, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Justin. I hope you do it.
I'll try.
Thanks for tuning in and making the choice to listen to this podcast. If you liked what you've heard today, please don't forget to subscribe.